Emma Woodhouse was born with the sun shining. To a father who always expected the worst, he usually takes care of Emma for not being sick. Emma had got a carefree mother. The Woodhouses live in Highbury, a small town about 16 miles outside of London. One day, the Woodhouse family had got the worst day all their lives. Mrs. Woodhouse died, so Emma does not remember her smile. Mrs. Woodhouse left $2 and a crying husband to the rest. Mr. Woodhouse resolved never to let his daughter out of sight again, except under the care of their governess, Anne Taylor. And so, the sun continued to shine brightly on Emma, but the other children in Highbury were not so fortunate. Young Frank Weston's world was turned upside down. His aunt took him from his father, providing that he would always live with her and his name would be Frank Churchill. And little Jane Fairfax's life also never to be the same when her aunt fell on hard times. Her aunt lets Jane to Captain Campbell because they wanted that they would do their best for Jane. Then they sent Jane, but they usually contact each other. And so Frank and Jane were forced to leave Highbury and trust their fortune to strangers. Jane usually wrote letters to Bates. They learned that she learned how she plays piano. Emma heard this conversation secretly under the table. Emma becomes young, pretty, and smart lady. She also happens to be the reigning queen of her village's social scene. During the years, there is only thing that Bates never gives up mention about Jane Fairfax. Emma always complains about this condition to Mr. Knightley. Isabella, Emma's sister, and John, Knightley's brother, love each other. But Emma thinks that it becomes thanks to her. Then Isabella and John married and they went to London for the rest of their lives. Mr. Woodhouse was upset. Emma promised to look after him through her life. Mr. Woodhouse loves Emma, but he is utterly unable to offer her any guidance, which is perhaps why Emma doesn't seem to have any sense of her own limitations. But she never gives up fingertip. She wonders who will be next. While she is looking over, she sees Mr. Weston looks at Miss Taylor. Then they married. After the wedding, Emma lives alone. While she wanders around, she sees Bates and Mrs. Goddard sit in the garden of the school. Emma sees Harriet Smith and learns the entire story about Harriet. She invites Harriet to come for supper. On the Tuesday night, everybody gets together for the supper.
Just for a moment there, I imagined that nothing had changed. Miss Taylor and her usual place and nothing unpleasant occurred.
This Weston, father, and we have a delightful new addition to our party.
Excuse me, Mr. House. I had been delayed in the village on the errand of one whose business I hold only in higher regard than yours.
On whose business? The Almighty's. God's. Of course, God's business. Just a little more regard than Miss Woodhouse. Yes, I see. How very civil.
You're most welcome, Mr. Elton, as always. I think I only have one introduction to make my special friend, Mrs. Harriet Smith.
Well, Miss Woodhouse's special friend can be one, no less, to me.
Harriet will be joining me this week when I go to visit the poor.
Bravo.
Life seems pretty sweet, if a bit boring, and so Emma decides to spice things up by taking a protege, Harriet Smith. Even though Emma's determined never to marry herself, she immediately decides to find Harriet a husband. Determined to make Harriet into a gentlewoman, Emma sets out to refine Harry's tastes, especially in men. She convinces Harry to dump Robert Martin, the young farmer who likes her, and set her sights on the town's clergyman, Mr. Elton. There's a supper for Christmas Eve, and everybody comes there. After the supper, unfortunately, Mr. Elton turns out to be in love with Emma, or at least with Emma's money. After the Mr. Elton debacle, Emma thinks that she has learned her lessons in matchmaking. Luckily for us, if not for Harriet, she has not. After days, everybody heard marriage of Mr. Elton. When the dashing Frank Churchill comes to town, Emma tries very hard to fall in love with him herself. There's a party. Jane plays piano there, and Emma often looks at Mr. Knightley. She can't seem to fall head over heels for him, but she does manage to make a good deal of mischief by flirting with him in front of Jane Fairfax, a young woman who recently returned to Highbury to live with her aunts. Meanwhile, Emma decides that Frank might just be the perfect new man for Harriet. Emma's exploits are watched and commented upon by her good friend, Mr. Knightley. Although Emma frequently ignores his advice, she cherishes his good opinion. They go to picnic all together.
I blame you entirely. You know that. I had no choice. You command me, I can't resist you. From the very first time I met you.
Your gallantry, sir, is unanswerable, but no one else speaking. We shouldn't talk in front of such nonsense people.
I'm silent for. I never want to give offense.
Well, I ashamed to repeat myself from the very first moment. I saw Miss Woodhouse in February. Let everyone on Box Hill hear me. I found her irresistible. Let me be heard from Mickleham to Borkin. Our companions are excessively stupid.
Your dear wife was sensible to remain at home, although I think some of it might benefit if our governesses were here.
What shall we do to provoke them? Any nonsense will do. They shall be made to talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ordered by Miss Woodhouse, who, wherever she is, proceeds over all ceremonies that she desires to know what you are all thinking of.
I am thinking of how hot it is, how we will keep the files of our pastries, how my mother will be doing at home, what extraordinary shapes clothes make 1 minute and another the next.
I am sure that I always keep what I am thinking to myself. I am the soul of discretion, while some demand that others be indiscreet.
Is Miss Woodhouse sure she would like to know what we are all thinking of?
Oh no, please, tell me anything but the truth of what you are thinking.
Ah, well no. I'm ordered by Miss Woodhouse that she wears her rather knowing what you might be all thinking of, and only requires something ever entertaining from each of you. Now she requires either one thing very clever, be it prose or verse, 2 things moderately clever, or 3 things very indulgent. She promises she will laugh heartily at all of them.
Well, then I shall do very well at your game, Miss Woodhouse. 3 things very dull indeed. That will be made tired for me. I can be relied upon to say 3 dull things as soon as I open my mouth.
But there's a difficulty. You will be limited as to number only 3 at once.
Yes, I see what she means. I will try and hold my tongue. I must be very disagreeable today.
I like this game. I will give you a conundrum.
Oh yes, conundrum. Let's hear it.
It isn't very clever. It is what the 2 letters of the alphabet express perfection.
2 letters? Well, I'm sure I don't know.
Well, I will tell you. M and A. Emma, now you understand?
Now we see the kind of clever thing required, but he has spoiled for all the rest of us. Perfection has cleverly come too soon.
Miss Woodhouse must excuse me. Excuse Mr. Elton and Knightley. We have nothing clever to say, not one of us.
Oh yes, you must excuse me. I have nothing to say that possible entertain Miss Woodhouse. Shall we walk, Augusta?
Okay.
Happy couple. How well they suit each other. They were lucky to find each other. To think they only had a New Week's coincidence in a public place. How can you learn a person's disposition if you meet them by chance in bed? It's only by seeing women in their own homes, amongst their own set, just as they always are, that you can really form a proper judgment. when I come to marry, someone else will choose a wife for me. Will you choose a wife for me? I know, I will like someone new else. I'm no hurry. Find one a wife for me. Adopt her. For me.
And make her like herself?
By all means, if you can.
Well, I understand your commission. You shall have a very charming wife.
She must be very lively. And her eyes, that are just some shades as yours. I will go abroad for a couple of years. When I return, I shall come to claim my wife, remember? I don't know how they can walk in the theater. I am going to leave this country just as soon as I can book a ticket.
I would like to see the view again. I intended to enjoy the rest of the day.
No, stay with me.
After Mr. Knightley accuses her of belittling her poor neighbors, Emma begins to reflect upon her mistakes and even starts to change her ways. Unfortunately, Harriet confesses that she loves Mr. Knightley, not Frank. All of a sudden, Emma's plan crumbles. She realizes that she loves Mr. Knightley too, convinced that Mr. Knightley might be interested in Harriet, despite the fact that he practically lives with the Woodhouse. Emma crushes Mr. Knightley's attempts to propose to her.